This is a part 2 to a recent video that has been notable, especially within the certain circles of the manosphere, in which I talked about the three fates of Black America. And just to recap, I personally don't think that what we call the community will remain as what we're seeing right now, that it will fracture into three major parts within the next few decades. The first part being the immigrants, including Caribbean and African immigrants, who they themselves will be a formidable group of people. The second group of people will include the multiracial descendant individuals who will have one black parent and one non-black parent, and they themselves will be a formidable force as well. The third group, however, will consist of an amplified version of what we see now as the former rotting corpse of the so-called black community. Going ahead and review that video in order to catch up, but on part 2, this is where I'm about to go into the evidence of what I spoke. Next year will be another census year, as census take place on every single decade, and in the 2020 census, it will ask black people about their exact origins. I have an article of it. Go on ahead and read the entire thing if you want. I'll read the first few paragraphs and we'll get into the analysis of what this really means. The 2020 census will ask black people about their exact origins. For the 2020 census next year, the U.S. Census Bureau is changing how it will ask black people to designate their race. Under the checkbox for Black or African American, the Bureau is asking a new space on the census questionnaire for participants to write in their non-Hispanic origin, according to a recent memo from the head of the 2020 census. African American, Jamaican, and Nigerian are listed as examples of origins on a questionnaire the Bureau is testing for 2020. The change means many black people in the U.S. may have to take a closer look at their family trees to answer what can be a thorny question: where are you really from? While many black immigrants can cite ties to a specific country, that question is difficult, if not impossible, for many U.S.-born African Americans to answer. The Bureau has not responded to NPR's questions about why it is making this change to both the black category and the white category, which will also include a new writing area for origins. But researchers at the Bureau have stated that they have been trying to respond to requests for more detailed, disaggregated data for our diverse American experiences as German, Mexican, Korean, Jamaican, and myriad other identities. The Bureau was considering an overall to all racial categories that would have added checkboxes for the largest ethnic groups and a writing area for smaller ones, but it would require the Trump administration's approval of an Obama-era proposal to change the federal standards on race and ethnicity data, which census experts say the White House Office of Management and Budget (OMB) is not likely to move forward. For Nayat Amare, the writing area will allow her to be more specific about her black identity. I'm African, I identify as black, but I don't see myself as African American, says Amare, who was born in Ethiopia and now lives in New York City. We can't just be black as African Americans. We are black from Africa. We are black from the Caribbean. We're black from everywhere. You can hear some of that diversity among the African diaspora at African Services Committee, where Amare works as a legal advocate for immigrants in New York City. Soninke, Mandingo, Wolof, Malinke, Pular, Amharic, Tigrinya, they're all spoken by the staff members at this Harlem-based non-profit organization where French is the common language in the office, according to Amanda Lugg, the Director of Advocacy for People Living with HIV. Lugg says more detailed census data about black people's ancestry can improve the public health work at her organization, which offers free health screenings to immigrants. This is a great step forward in terms of being able to get more specific information on who's actually living here, says Lugg, who identifies as Black British. Mulusu Bekele, the Director of Program Operations at African Services Committee, says asking for people's origins on the census is likely to run into a major hurdle. Around the country, there is growing distrust and turnover of personal information to the government. Are people willing to answer that question given the current anti-immigrant sentiment? That I can't tell, says Bekele, who's Ethiopian American. It is a concern shared by Christina Greer, a political science professor at Fordham University who wrote Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. This keeps me up at night because it's not just about filling out the census, she says. Greer warns that if fewer black people participate in the upcoming census, There could be an undercount that would have impacts lasting long after 2020, including on redistributing seats in the House of Representatives and drawing up legislative districts. Feel free to read the rest of the story for yourself with the link down below. It basically just goes into perspectives that each of these individuals who are interviewed have about this change in the 2020 census regarding Black American identities or Black American native lands. Now, I've stated before that the first two group of individuals in the three fates of Black America will actively take a role in separating themselves from the collective Negro class. Now, if you want me to ask what I think about race, I truly believe that one, it is definitely a social construct, and two, it is definitely a class structure. A class structure that was made by real white supremacists back in the past in order to identify a certain group of people from other groups of people. Notice how in many states, Latinos, Asians, and Native Americans were not part of the miscegenation laws. These were only limited to quote-unquote blacks. Now, as far as this is concerned, the black class, ever since the 1970s, have fallen into this stereotypical trap of either being victims or embracing the worst stereotypes imaginable. And this has hampered the progress of the black race in the United States as a whole. Africans coming here, and along with Caribbeans, you can argue that they don't have the trauma and the stigma that comes with being Black American. But to be honest, a part of it, a big part of it, is due to their own hard work and determination. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but let's be honest, that's the truth. There have been individuals who have came to this country who have looked like your typical ebony Americans, who have matched and exceeded that of native Anglo-Saxon Americans, and I can have my reasons on that in another video. But as far as this is concerned, these Africans and Caribbeans, despite their hard work, despite their efforts, despite them being upstanding citizens for the most part, except for 21 Savage, which that's a whole nother story. But the majority of these individuals are getting tired of being lumped in with the lower income black class. A lot of people say, well, when the police pull you over, they only see a black man, and you're nothing but this, and you're nothing but that. And these Africans and Caribbeans have had it with that kind of language. If you want to apply that to Caribbeans and Africans, these Caribbeans and Africans have something for the mediocre Negro, particularly if this mediocre Negro is refusing to recognize their ways, shape up, and get on point, which has definitely been the case for the past, I would say, 20 years. Yeah, you had a small time where blacks were going to college and being all intellectual. Okay, that was cool. Right before gangster rap showed up, right before the welfare state showed up, right before it was cool to have swag. Go back to my video, Swag Pass. But as far as this is concerned, there are things that the mediocre Negro of America doesn't want to admit that they have done wrong and are doing wrong. And the Africans and Caribbeans are done waiting for the American Negro to go on ahead, admit their faults, and shape up. So you know what they said? It doesn't mention it in this article, but this is the God's honest truth. A lot of them put some money under the table to whoever in order to have the census state that there is a difference between Caribbeans, Africans, and blacks. Now in reality, the Caribbeans and Africans would have been content if the census stated non-Negro blacks. They would have been fine with that, because Caribbeans and Africans know how throughout all the tribalism, throughout all the balkanism that a lot of people state that these groups have, once they come to the United States, they don't practice that tribalism on each other. You aren't going to see a Nigerian giving the stank eye or the cold shoulder to another African or Caribbean or a black person from, say, Britain or Canada or even South America. And neither any of those other groups will do the same thing towards any of those other aforementioned groups. But when it comes to this Negro, this mediocre Negro, that's the group that they want to disassociate and disaffiliate themselves from. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to how this mediocre Negro has been portraying himself under this swag image, under this hood street image, and he has the gall to paint himself as a victim, especially when he gets caught up, I don't blame the Caribbean and Africans for making this move. This is the foundational move of what's going to make this first group of black Americans in the future that I detailed. This is just the beginning. This is just the basis. And yes, they are taking advantage of your schools, the affirmative action quotas, that sort of thing, because guess what? That's human nature. And trust me, if you as American blacks could do the same thing and go to another country and do that, you would. The fact of the matter is that you all have screwed it up for the rest of us, that it's harder than nails in the chalkboard for us to immigrate anywhere else. They're looking at our image now and looking like, we don't want these kind of people here. And yes, I advocated in my previous video how to fix the international migrant and population crisis that yes, certain blacks need to be immigrated to certain countries that need it and would accept them, because quite frankly there are a small group of non-Negro American blacks who have proven themselves throughout all sorts of adversities from external sources and within the community that they can succeed. And as a result, these people need a break. I'm including us in this category. Us thinking definitely men and women need a break from not just the American way of whatever, but the communitized way, which is basically an extension of the American way. But that's for that video. But these Africans and Caribbeans are taking a proactive stance on separating themselves from this mediocre Negro, this Pookie and Shanae, and their baby's kids. They've had it. It's done. It's at the 12th round, and quite frankly, the African American Negro is basically tilting like it's Mortal Kombat with finish him, and the African and the Caribbean are like, yeah, we aren't going to even do a fatality on you. It's not even worth it. Just end the match. So that's where we are when it comes to this, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. What have I been telling the community to do? Well, yeah, you guys aren't going to listen to me because I don't have the voice of the hood. I don't have the swag pass, you mean? No, I don't say they, I say there. I don't use we, I say we're. I don't use ain't or I'ma or any of those Negro colloquialisms that perks up and gets the attention of this Negro, because talking like he just stepped out of the plantation or rap video is basically half the way how to get views in a particular manosphere. Let me shut up. Let me shut up. You Negros brought this upon yourselves, so whenever you see an African or Caribbean giving you the cold shoulder and the stink eye, don't complain. Or, if you're going to complain, go complain to the people who dragged us all down. Everyone else out there, always bet on X.